At 82, she decided to run away from home. What could possibly drive an elderly woman after a lifetime of routine and sacrifice to leave everything behind and start over? Here on this channel, you'll discover true stories that move, inspire, and surprise. Tales of courage, second chances, and the extraordinary hidden in ordinary lives. If you believe it's never too late to change your destiny, you're in the right place. Subscribe now and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story that might change the way you see life. My name is Eleanor May Thompson, and at 82 years old, I did something that would make my late mother roll over in her grave. I ran away from home, not in the dramatic teenage way with slammed doors and tearful goodbyes, but quietly, methodically, like the old woman I've become. Though perhaps old isn't the right word anymore. It started on a Tuesday morning in March. I remember because Tuesdays were always my least favorite day. Laundry day, grocery day, the day my daughter Patricia would call to remind me of all the things I was supposedly forgetting. That particular Tuesday, she'd called earlier than usual. "Mom, Mrs. Henderson from next door called me again. She says you've been wandering around the yard at night in your nightgown." I gripped the phone tighter, my arthritic fingers protesting. "Mrs. Henderson needs to mind her own business." "Mother, this is serious. We've talked about this. You can't live alone anymore. The memory care facility has an opening." I hung up just like that. For the first time in my life, I hung up on one of my children. The silence that followed was deafening. I stood in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd made countless meals, packed countless lunches, kissed countless scraped knees better, and suddenly I realized something profound. This house no longer felt like home. It felt like a prison, and my own family had become the warden. You see, what Mrs. Henderson saw as wandering was actually me trying to remember. Every night I'd walk through my garden touching the roses Harold and I planted for our 25th anniversary, visiting the oak tree where we deburied our beloved dog. Max standing by the fence where I used to watch my children play. I was losing my mind. I was trying to hold on to the pieces of my life that still made sense. But no one asked me what I was doing. They just assumed. That's when I started planning my escape. People underestimate old women. They see the gray hair, the careful steps, the reading glasses, and they assume we're fragile, confused, helpless. What they don't see is the lifetime of problems, the decades of managing households and crises, the steel backbone that comes from surviving 8 decades on this planet. I had advantages they didn't expect. I still drove, though Patricia had been nagging me to give up my license. I had my own bank account. Something I'd fought Harold for back in 1967, much to his chagrin. And most importantly, I had a secret. 6 months earlier, while cleaning out Harold's old desk, I'd found a safety deposit box key I'd never seen before. When I went to the bank to investigate, I discovered he'd been squirreling away money for years. Not a fortune, mind you, but enough. Enough for what I was planning. The plan was simple. I would disappear before they could ship me off to Sunset Manor or whatever sterile facility they'd chosen. I'd leave a note explaining that I was fine, that I needed time, and that I'd contact them when I was ready. What I wouldn't tell them was where I was going, because even I wasn't entirely sure yet. I spent weeks preparing. I researched bus routes, looked up small towns within a day's travel, even called a few bed and breakfasts under the pretense of planning a vacation. The irony wasn't lost on me. At 82, I was planning my first real adventure. The hardest part was deciding what to take. A lifetime of possessions had to fit into one suitcase. I chose carefully Harold's wedding ring, our wedding photo, my mother's pearl necklace, a few comfortable clothes, my medications, and my journal. The one I'd been writing in since I was 16. On the chosen morning, I dressed carefully in my best traveling dress, navy blue with small white flowers, the one Harold always said made my eyes sparkle. I made my bed with hospital corners, washed my breakfast dishes, and left them in the rack to dry. I wanted to leave everything perfect, so they'd know this wasn't the confused wandering of a senile old woman, but the deliberate choice of someone in complete control of her faculties. The note I left was brief. Dear children, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I am not lost, confused, or in danger. I am 82 years old, and for the first time in my adult life, I am free to choose my own path. I will contact you when I'm ready. Please don't look for me. Love always. Mother, I called a taxi, something I'd never done in my life, and asked the driver to take me to the Greyhound station. The bus station smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams. I sat on a hard plastic chair, my small suitcase at my feet, watching the other travelers. Most were young, heading to new jobs or new loves or new disasters. A few were my age, probably visiting grandchildren or going to medical appointments. None of them were running away. Where to, ma'am? The ticket agent asked when I reached the counter. I looked at the board showing destinations and times. Chicago, Atlanta, New Orleans, Denver. Cities I'd only seen in movies or magazines. Places Harold had promised we'd visit someday. A someday that never came. What's the next bus to somewhere with mountains? I asked. My story is not a unique one. I'm sure there are thousands of grandmothers like me across America who are escaping the tyranny of adult children and finding themselves hiking, getting new tattoos, maybe even taking lovers. Mine is just one of those stories. My kids were horrified, of course, when I told them I'd officially decided to move to Asheville. Patricia demanded that I sell the house, saying that no respectable senior citizen would live alone in a house that size. Robert claimed he'd found signs of a financial struggle. Mom, why didn't you just ask us for money if things were tight? He sounded outraged. And then there was the guilt trip. David insisted he'd come spend the summer helping me move and settling my affairs, which meant he wouldn't be able to go on his annual camping trip with his buddies. A trip that, according to Margaret, he'd been planning since he was a teenager. Of course, I knew what they were really worried about. My house had been in my name alone, so if I died, they stood to inherit the entire estate, whatever that might be worth. If I moved to Asheville and eventually died there, I'd be leaving them high and dry. They'd heard the local real estate agent's assessment that the house would likely sell for well over $1 million, thanks to the recent influx of tech workers moving from California and New York. I could see that they were doing the math in their heads, imagining what they'd each get. What they were really angry about was the fact that I'd taken my house, my money and my future, and built a life that didn't include them anymore. The problem was, that's what I'd intended to do. It wasn't a sudden decision. I'd been planning my escape for years, ever since my husband, Harold, died. I'd been aware that my life was living on borrowed time. I had a feeling that someday soon I'd drop dead of a heart attack and join him. And if that happened, my kids would be the beneficiaries. They'd sort through my things, throw most of it away, sell the house and split the money. I wanted to do something bold. I wanted to buy some time and make a life for myself, not for them. I was 82 years old. Time was running out. The problem was, I couldn't think of anything more terrifying than spending my last years playing bridge, knitting, and volunteering at the local animal shelter. I needed an adventure, something daring, something exciting, something a bit reckless, like moving to the middle of nowhere to buy a goat. And then I discovered a book called How to Be an Explorer of the World by National Geographic. It was filled with breathtaking photos of majestic landscapes, rare wildlife, and far-flung cultures. Then I came across an article on Asheville, North Carolina, and the Blue Ridge Mountains. It was the kind of place I'd never even heard of, let alone visited. And I loved it. When I revealed my plan to my kids, they laughed in my face. "Mom, are you serious? You want to move to the middle of nowhere?" "That's not the middle of nowhere," I corrected. "It's a vibrant arts community nestled in the picturesque Blue Ridge Mountains. Plus, the climate is mild compared to the rest of North Carolina, and Asheville has been ranked the #1 fastest-growing metro area in the United States for 2 years running." "Are you sure you won't be bored there, Mom?" Patricia asked. "Who wants to live in a place without an outlet mall or a movie theater?" "I will," I said firmly. "But you're not going alone," Patricia insisted. "One of us is coming with you to help you manage." "Nope," I said. "This is my adventure. Besides, you guys have your own lives now." "We do," David argued, "but you're still our mother." At that point, I got angry. My role as your mother ended the day you turned 18. I snapped. Your job is to stop calling me for favors, asking me for money, demanding that I fix your problems, being nosy, critical, or judgmental. Mom, Robert said quietly, why do you not you just wait until you resettled in, and then LL pay you a surprise visit? Don't insult me, I hissed. I want to be alone. To their credit, they stopped pestering me. They understood that I was serious. The only other person I told my plans to was my neighbor, Helen, who was more excited for me than anyone else. We became fast friends as kids. Her family had the strictest rules imaginable, and mine was the most lenient. So we used to sneak out of our houses and meet at the creek behind our yards. We'd spend hours making daisy chains, climbing trees, and pretending we were explorers discovering exotic lands. We'd vowed then that we'd have exciting lives, and I intended to keep my promise. I wasn't totally alone in Asheville. Within a month of my arrival, I'd met people I liked. There was Mabel, a retired psychologist who ran a weekly philosophy discussion group. Dr. Phillips, an African-American gentleman who believed that the good Lord had spared him so he could attend as many baseball games as possible. And Miss Eva Lynn, a former school teacher who baked the most delicious pies in town and claimed the aliens had visited her farmhouse. One evening, Mabel invited me to a poetry slam at a downtown cafe. I was skeptical, but she insisted. You're a writer, Eleanor, she said. And who knows, you might find your new muse. I ended up having a wonderful time. The performers were young, raw, and honest. Their words explored themes of love and loss, hope and despair, faith and doubt. Afterward, I told Mabel, I haven't felt this alive in decades. See? I told you, she said with a knowing smile. A couple of months later, I found myself standing on a bustling city street in Asheville. Surrounded by shops, cafes, and restaurants, I was holding a map that showed the location of my next destination. My hands trembled slightly as I unfolded the paper. I was ready for my next adventure, and this time, I wasn't afraid. I learned that the most important thing is to find a place where you belong. A place where you feel loved and accepted for who you are. It doesn't matter whether it's a physical place or a community of people. For me, Asheville provided both. It's a place where I can explore the natural world, connect with others who share my interests, and live life on my own terms. I no longer feel like a burden to my family or a relic of the past. Instead, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. As I set off on my journey, I know that the road ahead may be long and winding, but I'm no longer afraid. I've discovered that the greatest adventure of all is the journey of self-discovery, and I'm just getting started. Now, if you're enjoying my story, please hit that thumbs up button. It really helps me out. And I'd also love to hear from you. Leave me a comment and tell me about the most exciting thing you've ever done, or the place you've always dreamed of visiting. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. Thank you. Now on with the show. My adventure continued the day I met a pair of hikers at my favorite breakfast spot, Tupelo Honey. They told me about a hidden waterfall deep in the forest, accessible only by following an unmarked trail. Intrigued, I decided to check it out. Little did I know that this seemingly ordinary hike would lead me to one of the most significant moments in my newfound life. As I ventured deeper into the woods, the trail became increasingly unclear. Rocks and roots snaked across my path, testing my balance and determination. But I pressed on, driven by a thirst for adventure that I hadn't felt in decades. Suddenly, the trees parted, revealing a sight that took my breath away. Cascading down moss-covered rocks was a waterfall unlike any I'd seen before. Its waters, crystal clear, plunged into a pool below, creating a mesmerizing spectacle of nature's raw beauty. And then I noticed something peculiar. Tucked behind the waterfall was a narrow opening. Curiosity piqued, I approached it cautiously. The opening led to a small cave, its entrance veiled by cascading water. Was I crazy? I wondered, considering the possibility of venturing inside. The idea both terrified and exhilarated me, but as I stood there contemplating, a strange calm washed over me. I felt an inexplicable pull, a sense of purpose that urged me forward. With a deep breath, I stepped into the cave. The air inside was cool and damp, carrying the scent of moss and earth. As my eyes adjusted to the dim light filtering through the cave's opening, I saw something that made my heart race. Carved into the cave wall was a series of symbols, ancient petroglyphs that seemed to whisper stories of a time long past. I traced their patterns with my fingertips, marveling at the thought of the people who had come before me, their presence echoing through time. In that moment, I realized that my journey was more than just a physical one. It was a journey of self-discovery, a pilgrimage to reconnect with a part of myself that had long been dormant. I had found a place where I could shed the weight of expectations, where I could explore the depths of my own spirit. It was a place of transformation, a sanctuary where I could discover the strength and resilience I never knew I possessed. A lot of women get to my age and think it's too late to do something for themselves. They've raised their kids, given up their dreams for family obligations, and put their husband's needs ahead of their own. By the time those duties are over, they feel like they've wasted their lives. So they cling to their health, their independence, their sanity, convinced that once those are gone, they have nothing left. What they do unrealize is that none of those things are worth holding on to if you have nothing else. Health does go someday. Independence becomes an unreasonable burden. Sanity is an illusion that keeps us from enjoying our twilight years. But all these things are infinitely better to lose on your terms than to cling to until they ripped away. When I realized it was too late for the life I'd dreamed of, I made a choice. I would take control of what little time I had left. It was easy, really. All I had to do was listen to myself. The voice inside my head had been screaming at me for years, telling me to move to the mountains, to buy paints and canvases, to travel. Now that voice could speak freely because the hearing aid was unplugged by decades of obligation and exhaustion anymore. The only question was, what would I do first? A year passed like that one before my big decision. I made plans. I traveled. I painted. I hiked. I discovered who I was. Without obligation, I rediscovered skills and interests I'd let atrophy. I joined a book club and started speaking my mind, which surprised everyone. Mother, Patricia said incredulously during one of her early visits, you always used to agree with everything everyone said. That was my role, I pointed out patiently. It wasn't my opinion that mattered, but now it does. Patricia wasn't happy about this evolution, but David was pleased. You know, Mom, he told me one night over takeout containers on my kitchen table, it's nice to finally hear your opinion, even if we disagree sometimes. I like knowing where you stand. That's because I had a lobotomy, I joked, which made him laugh. And then he gave me a serious look. Don't change, Mom. Be you. We may not always agree, but at least you're you. Then the second thing happened. The thing that shifted everything. I received a letter saying my house was up for auction. The bank believed I was incapacitated. So my house, my husband's house, the place I'd lived in for 62 years, was being sold. I read the letter twice, and while I knew it made sense, I was floored. After I contacted the lawyer to confirm the details, I picked up the phone and called Patricia. Mother, she said sharply, as if interrupting her day with news that was somehow her responsibility. I got the lawyer's letter about the house. What do I do? You sign the paper. I've already talked to Robert, and we'll divide up the contents. The house is probably unsalvageable. It'll sell for pennies on the acre, but I want to live in the house, I said impulsively. You can't live in that house alone, Patricia replied dismissively. You need someone to care for you. But I want to live there, I repeated stubbornly. Why do you want to stay in that empty house all alone? No one wants to live there. Because it's my house, I whispered, surprised by the sudden welling up of emotion. I felt pathetic for wanting that house, but the desire wouldn't go away. Patricia sighed. Very well, Robert and I will talk to the bank. Don't worry, Mother. I didn't worry, I seethed. I wasn't helpless. I was angry. This was my chance to prove I didn't need anyone to take care of me. It was my opportunity to show them I wasn't useless. And they were robbing me of it. So I wrote them a letter. A letter that took me hours to compose. Because I wanted to make sure I got it just right. Dar Patricia, Robert, Margaret, and David. I am writing because I understand that you believe I need help making decisions regarding my property. I appreciate your concern, but I assure you I am perfectly capable of managing my own affairs. I am not demented. I am not senile. I am not incapable of caring for myself. In fact, I am quite capable of handling whatever challenges lie ahead. I intend to live out my days in my own home. Whether that is possible or not is entirely in your hands. Do not force me into assisted care. Do not sell my house. Do not make decisions for me. Only then will I know that you respect me as much as you claim to love me. Love, Mother. I knew they'd tried to put me in some home, but I was ready. I was renting a small cottage in the mountains, away from prying eyes and enabling hearts. I'd save money. I'd build a life. I'd be safe. They couldn't get to me. I heard from them again 2 weeks later. Patricia called me sobbing, "Mother." You don't understand. The bank won't listen. They want to foreclose. They say you're incapacitated. If you don't give them power of attorney, they'll take the house. The lawyer says you're the only person who can stop it. That's correct, I replied evenly. If you want to keep the house, you must sign the documents. But, Mother, no buts. You have 24 hours to decide. She hung up before I could say another word. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Time to teach them a lesson. I grabbed the phone and dialed my lawyer. "Get me the forms," I instructed crisply. "The power of attorney forms. I'm about to sign my name to those papers, but I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it for me." "Mother," Patricia said weakly when I called her back, "there's no need for this. We just want to help." "By forcing me into a nursing home, you mean? Why don't you ask me if I want your help? You can't handle this yourself," she snapped. "You need us." "Not true," I replied calmly. "And if you want proof, come to the house right now." I could hear the struggle in Patricia's voice. She obviously hadn't expected resistance. "Mother, are you sure you're well enough to come to the city? You know you can't manage the stairs at my house." "That's why you're giving me power of attorney, isn't it? To make decisions for me." "You can't climb the stairs, Mother. I can't bear the thought of you falling and hurting yourself." "Then send David," I said simply. "He can drive me. He's the only one who's actually asked if I'm okay." Silence descended, heavy and final. Finally, Patricia spoke. "All right," she said reluctantly. "David will come pick you up tomorrow. Are you sure you're all right?" "Of course I'm sure," I said. "Just make sure the car has enough gas. I want to go for a drive after we're done signing papers." As soon as Patricia hung up, I called my lawyer. "Are the documents ready?" I asked. "They're on their way," she said. "I'll drop them off tonight. You'll have plenty of time to sign them tomorrow." I spent the next few hours cleaning the house, arranging furniture, gathering the photo albums, getting everything in order for my visitors. By the time the sun set, My house was a museum of memories. As I blew out the candles on my dinner, I reflected on my upcoming journey. I was scared, but I was ready to show them what they'd lost, ready to show myself what I was made of, ready to start my new life. As I write this, I have no idea how my story will end. Perhaps my children will rally around, determined to win me back. Perhaps they'll leave me alone, sensing that nothing will convince me to return to the life we once shared. Perhaps they'll respect my wishes and allow me to live my remaining days in peace. The truth is, I don't care. After a lifetime of putting others' needs ahead of my own, I am done caring. I am done pleasing. I am through with sacrificing my happiness for theirs. From now on, I will live for me. Running away is often associated with a lack of courage. Yet, running away can be the bravest thing you do in your entire life. This is the story of how I found my life. It was February when I decided I'd had enough. I'd had enough of the lies and deceptions, enough of the resentments and regrets. I packed a bag, kissed Harold awake, and left. I was 82 years old and I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay. Patricia answered the phone. "Hello?" I said, bracing myself. "Why are you calling from a public payphone? Where are you? What are you doing?" "Don't worry, Hattie," I lied. "I'm fine. I just need a ride to the airport. I'm leaving town." There was a long silence. "Why? Just need a change, Patty. A change." Then I hung up before she could say anything more. As soon as I got off the phone, I flagged down a cab and gave him the address of a small NID scene on the way to Asheville. 1 hour later, I paid the driver, walked into the inn, and collapsed onto a worn leather sofa. I looked up as an elderly couple entered. "Hello?" I said. "Is this room available?" The woman smiled. "For how long?" she asked. "Until I decide to come back," I said truthfully, "or until my children drag me home in a body bag." That was almost 4 years ago, and so far, none of them has come looking for my corpse. It turns out that senior years can be as dramatic as any Lifetime television movie. Here's my story. I met Harold when I was 19, and he was the sweetest boy in Sunday school. Over time, the sweet boy morphed into a good man, a man I could trust to fix leaky faucets and broken hearts. We married right after college, bought a house in the suburbs, and raised 2 lovely children. Our marriage was comfortable, predictable, respectable. It ticked all the right boxes. I loved Harold, but I never really knew him. I knew his likes and dislikes, his dreams and fears, the contents of his heart. What I didn't know was the contents of his sock drawer. Harold was secretive about money. He never spoke of his personal finances or showed me statements. He handled the investments and paid the bills, and I trusted him implicitly. Even as my daughters grew older and talked about college funds. Don't you think we should talk about this? I suggested once. We have time, Harold replied, waving away my concerns. He left me a letter. I explained to my daughter when she called last year. A letter? About money. Oh, Mom, Patricia sighed. He was trying to hide his affair. Those are the kinds of things men put in letters. In fact, the letter contained instructions about where he'd hidden money he'd set aside for each of his children. How much did he leave each of you? I asked. Enough for a decent education, I guess. How about you? Same as you, she said quietly. Harold left us nothing. I felt a familiar surge of protectiveness toward my youngest. The same protective instincts that had driven me to bake cookies for my daughter's friends suddenly propelled me into action. I knew that lawyer. He specialized in uncovering hidden assets. I called him immediately. Turns out Harold had stashed away hundreds of thousands of dollars in accounts he apparently believed I'd never find because I wasn't smart enough. My rage mingled with my hurt, and I felt the first stirring of defiance toward my eldest. Soon after that, Patricia called crying. It's not fair, Mom. Why does Robert get all that money and we get nothing? Don't let him hurt you, honey, I said, my voice shaking. Don't let him or Dad hurt you. Before Patricia hung up, I heard her say, This isn't over, Eleanor. You'll pay for this. And I knew she wasn't talking about money. The day before I moved out, I called Robert to tell him about Harold's secret money. Really? So why didn't you tell us sooner? Because I was hoping you wouldn't ask for any. Whatever, he muttered. Just send a damn check to Robert. Is that clear, Mother? Robert, I said tightly. Harold left Patricia and me nothing. It's our right to receive equal shares of his estate. If you take advantage of Patricia's youth and inexperience, I will cut you out of everything Harold and I owned. Do you understand? Silence. Fine, he finally said. But don't expect me to help you if you need anything. You've made your bed, Mother. Now lie in it. And that's exactly what I did. There's a place in North Carolina called Black Mountain, where mountains are black and dreams grow wings. I fell in love with the area years ago, and began buying second homes near there, renting them to vacationers when I wasn't using them. With Harold gone, I sold my houses, said goodbye to my life, and moved into one of my vacation rentals. No furniture, no knickknacks, not even pictures on the walls. It was cold and empty and utterly liberating. For the first time in decades, I felt free. My children descended upon me, each with an agenda. David wanted me to sell the house quickly and move in with him and his wife. Jennifer wanted me to come live with them until I figured out my next move. Robert just wanted to know when the check would arrive. Check? I asked blankly. For what? Don't play dumb with me," he snapped. "You know what I want. Stop wasting my time." When he slammed the door on his way out, I laughed. I laughed and laughed until I cried. Relief washed through me. Powerful and cleansing. Over time, my children accepted that I meant what I said. I was staying put. Still, they kept trying to nudge me back into the life I was born for, the life that Harold and I built together. Every 6 weeks or so, Patricia would show up bearing gifts. "Eat this, Mom. Wear this, Mom. Why don't you come home? Just come home." But I didn't want to go home. I liked living on my own. I hiked. I read. I joined a walking group. The physical activity helped, clearing my head and my heart. And the mountain air was a balm on my skin and soul. For the first time in my life, I enjoyed being alone. Then one day I slipped on a wet rock and tore ligaments in my ankle. The doctor told me I'd need crutches for 6 weeks. "You'll be fine," he said with a smile. "Nothing like a major injury to really slow you down." Well, I might have been able to manage, except that I have a cat, a willful, independent creature who refused to use a litter box. I mean, she would only use the litter box I had in my bathroom. She wouldn't use the one I set up downstairs, even though I carried her to it every few hours. She hated being crutch-bound, and Bella hated it too. That's when I called Patricia. "You look," she paused, "different," I said, the same word David had struggled with. "Healthy," she finished. "You look really healthy, Mom." I stood up, brushing dirt from my hands. At 82, I was stronger than I'd been at 75. The hiking, the mountain air, the absence of constant stress. It had all worked better than any medicine. "Would you like some tea?" I offered. We sat on my porch, the silence stretching between us. Patricia kept looking around like she was taking inventory, perhaps searching for evidence of my incompetence. "The private investigator we hired said you've been, dating," she said finally. "His name is Frank. He's a good man. Mother, you can't just... You're 82 years old." "Yes, I am. And in all those 82 years, when exactly did I become too old to make my own choices about companionship?" Patricia's composure cracked. "We were scared, Mom. We thought something terrible had happened to you." "Something terrible was about to happen to me," I said quietly. "You were going to erase me, put me somewhere safe and clean and empty, where I could sit quietly and wait to die. That terrified me more than any adventure ever could. We just wanted what was best for you. No, Patricia, you wanted what was easiest for you. And What do you think? Hasn't that been your experience too? That when you finally found the courage to break through all that noise and figure out who you really are, then it was the best thing you ever did? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. I always read them, even if I can't always respond. And while you're down there, please consider clicking the like button. I know it's hard to believe, but it actually helps other people find this video and maybe help them too. Thanks for being here. And now let's get started. Hi, I'm here. Today we're going to talk about second chances, about how it's never too late to take a chance, to try again, or to begin something new. We're going to look at how even when it seems like it's the end of the world, it might actually be the beginning of something better. There's a letter in my desk drawer that I write and rewrite but will never send. It is set addressed to women like I used to be. Women who've spent their lives serving everyone else's needs, who've forgotten that they have their own dreams worth pursuing. I'm writing to tell you it's not too late. I was 82 when I learned this lesson. But you don't have to wait that long. You don't have to run away like I did. But you do need to run toward something. Toward the woman you've always been but never allowed yourself to become. It's terrifying and exhilarating and worth every moment of discomfort. The people who truly love you will adjust. The ones who don't. Well, that tells you something important about the nature of their love, doesn't it? You are not too old, too tired, too set in your ways, or too anything to start over. You are not a supporting character in your own life. You are the protagonist, and your story isn't over yet. It's never too late to come home to yourself. With love and hope, Eleanor Porter, formerly Eleanor Thompson, professional people pleaser, and full-time invisible woman. People ask me all the time if I regret running away at 82. The question always makes me smile, because it contains a fundamental misunderstanding. I didn't run away. I ran toward possibility, toward myself, toward the life I was meant to live. The only thing I regret is waiting so long to do it. When I was 82, I woke up in the middle of the night panicked. It was the usual kind of panic that comes from dreaming I am late for something or that I am naked in public. It was worse. It was primal, bone-deep terror. Then I heard it. My inner voice saying, "You're too late. It's too late. It's too late." And then I realized I had been listening to that voice for decades. It told me to tone down my opinions, make myself smaller, dim my lights so I wouldn't offend anyone. But that night, I knew it was wrong. I was terrified, but also exhilarated by the thought that I could choose to ignore that voice forever. That was 8 years ago. And I haven't looked back. The hardest part was telling my family. They were worried about me. Of course. How could I, a wife of 63 years, leave my husband George alone in our comfortable home? What would I do without him? He'd be so lonely. But I explained that he'd be lonely whether I stayed or went. And besides, we were both approaching 90, which gave us exactly 3 things in common with Romeo and Juliet. I was looking for my own balcony, not a mausoleum. They understood. Of course they did. They were my family, after all. But that didn't stop them from worrying. They worried about my health, about whether I could find a job, about how I would manage, and I promised to call if I needed anything. But truthfully, I already had everything I needed. I had my wits, my health, my determination, and a little money stashed away. Not enough to be carefree, but enough to try. I moved into a small studio apartment near downtown, and then I started looking for work. I wanted something that would allow me to stay active and perhaps even help other people, so I began volunteering at an animal shelter. After a few months, they hired me as their events coordinator, which meant planning adoption days, obedience classes, and fundraising events. It was perfect. It was exactly what I wanted to be doing with my time. One Saturday afternoon, I was organizing a bake sale to benefit the shelter. We had dog biscuits, cat treats, and cupcakes decorated with little paw prints. A gentleman approached our booth and asked if I was the owner. I don't want to complain, he said, but these cupcakes are dry as sawdust, and this pound cake has a funny aftertaste. Is this really the best you can do? I smiled. This is not my bakery, I said. But if you're willing to give me some pointers, I'd love to learn how to make better baked goods for next time. He beamed at me. My dear lady, you've got a real gift for this. I'm Roger Hansen, food critic at the local newspaper. Why don't you call me if you want to team up on a story? A few weeks later, the article appeared. Local animal shelter enlists unlikely duo of food critic and former corporate trainer in bid to win over feline clientele. I was thrilled. I loved my new life. It felt like I was starting over, but better because now I knew who I was and what I liked, and I had no intention of going back. Last week, I got a letter from a woman in Oregon who read my blog. She's 67 and just left her husband of 45 years to go back to school to become a veterinarian. Something she wanted to do since she was 10 years old. She signed her letter another late bloomer. That's what we are. Those of us who find ourselves later in life. Late bloomers, but late blooms are often the most spectacular. Because we bloom with the wisdom of all our seasons behind us. At 82, I thought I was running away from home, but I was wrong. I was running toward it. Home isn't a place where people remember who you used to be. It is a place where you re-free to discover who you re-meant to become. And sometimes, to find that place, you have to be brave enough to leave everything else behind. The truth is, none of us knows how much time we have left. And that's why I encourage you to listen to your inner voice. The one that tells you what you really want. The one that whispers possibilities to you in the middle of the night. Don't ignore it any longer. It's time to pay attention to that voice. It's time to listen to yourself. Not long ago, I was having lunch with my friend Martha. Martha was one of the bridesmaids at my wedding. When I told her I was moving out, she said, "I thought you were happy." I stopped stirring my tea and looked at her. I was, until I realized that what I thought I wanted wasn't what I actually wanted. Being happy isn't the same as being satisfied, and sometimes you have to make a choice between the two. I paused, letting those words sink in before I added, I didn't choose happiness because it turned out that being me was more important. Martha knew how difficult the decision had been for me, but like my family, she was worried. She was afraid that I would fail or get hurt. "But what if you don't succeed?" she asked hesitantly. "What if you move out and it doesn't work out?" I looked at her, surprised by the question. "Then I'll move back in," I said. "And if that happens, then I'll change the ending." Martha frowned. "How can you do that?" I smiled. "Because I'm a writer," I said. "I can change the ending?" And you know what, Martha? Sometimes endings are really just another beginning in disguise. It's never too late to realize your dreams, to pursue your passions, or to reinvent yourself. And if you happen to be 82 years old and no one dares suggest that you're too old to do anything, well, then it's even less late than you think. It's time to stop waiting and start living. Time to stop hoping and start doing. The only person who can stop you from doing what you want to do is you. Because ultimately, isn't that the greatest freedom of all? The freedom to choose. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with others. Subscribe to my channel and follow me on social media. Until next time, remember, you can be like you right now. That's the secret I learned too late. You don't have to wait for permission to be yourself.